Chapter 1911. Settle down too. It seemed that the first elder was standing on Su Luo's side unconditionally. The third elder's complexion became worse and worse. She did not know that the city master had already spoken to the first elder. Miss Su, while using powerful connections to intimidate people, but you actually have a powerful strength, you're able to make the city gate collapse. There's a sarcastic smile in the third elder's eyes. Su Luo slowly smiled. If it wasn't for the third elder's attempted murder, how could the city wall collapse? Don't the third elder think that you should give us an explanation? The third elders made an unfounded accusations against her, so naturally she also could do the same thing to get back at her. The third elder fight with them regardless their position as a younger generation, but the first elder wouldn't let her be so unbridled. So he faintly swept his eyes towards Ziyin. So Ziyin summed up the previous matter in a few words. She also highlighted Lan Yi and Huang Yi's arrogance and how they tried to kill her. After Ziyin finished speaking, Su Luo still did not forget to add, if Purgatory City really does not welcome us, then let's leave. When the city master comes back, you can explain it to him yourself. With that, Su Luo turned around and pretended to leave. Ziyin and the others immediately followed closely behind her to leave. The first elder glanced unhappily at the third elder and said lightly, Lan Yi and the others were not good at handling the affairs. Impunity is not enough to convince the masses. As for how to punish, the first elder smiled and threw the hot potato to Su Luo. Miss Su, about how to punish them, it's up to you, you can decide. The third elder was angry, but the first elder's authority couldn't be defied, so she could only sulk secretly. Her cold eyes glare at Su Luo's face like a knife. Su Luo touched her chin, seemingly very serious. Her brain moved quickly. Soon, her eyes twinkled, her lips formed a smile, and she asked the first elder, since the first elder admitted my identity, I don't know if I've been arranged a place to live. The first elder knew what she meant. He stroked his goatee beard with a smile. A place to live in naturally had been arranged properly, but it only lacked a few servant girls who do rough work. One servant girl to do rough work doesn't seem to be enough. Su Luo played with her hair and seemed to be at a loss. How about two? The first elder still smiled like a kind grandfather. The three elders stared at the first elder. The disciple she was proud of is being punished to be a servant girl to do rough work? Isn't that like slapping her in the face? Doesn't that mean she couldn't even protect her own disciples? That's all right, two it is. Su Luo's fingers pointed at Lan Yi and Huang Yi, as casually as a general ordered his soldiers. The two of them look very suitable. No way. The third elder interrupted. Huang Yi's body is badly injured. Her breath is weak, and she couldn't stand up. How can she be a servant girl who rough work? This objection was reasonable. But Su Luo smiled and pulled out a white jade porcelain bottle from her sleeve and slowly shake a red pill toward the third elder. Emperor grade, blood-clotting pill. Not only the third elder, but also many people who knew what it was. The Emperor grade pill, even in Purgatory City, was also considered a very precious pills. There was only a small amount of it in stock. It's all kept in the hands of the top experts. Grandmaster Rong Yun was the only one who could refine the Emperor grade pills in this continent. Su Luo was so kind to take out the Emperor grade blood-clotting pill and give it to the person who tried to take her life before. For a while, everyone simply didn't know what to say. Chapter 1912. Settle down 3. The third elder stared rigidly at Su Luo. Her face was uncertain whether it's cloudy or clear, and her eyes were too profound to be understood. The first elder looked at Su Luo with a smile. It was not so difficult to imagine that a person who was doted on by the city master could take out an Emperor-grade pill, but it was really hard to imagine that she could give away the Emperor-grade pills like a candy. But what's certain was that this girl was definitely a person with a story. The elder sighed and smiled calmly and peacefully. Okay, Miss Su. This one will show you the Purgatory City. This will be the place where you would live in the future. The first elder treated Su Luo as a guest of honor. This attitude made a lot of people dumbfounded. The third elder at the side slightly clenched her fists. This is going too far. But Su Luo passed by her and followed the first elder. Su Luo knew that after the previous contacts, No matter how she lowered her voice and repressed her feeling, the hostile relationship between her and the third elder couldn't be solved peacefully. In this case, it's better to offend her thoroughly. Everyone was a little dumbfounded. Their head was dizzy as they watched the group gradually get further away. The people guarding the gate started talking after they left. The people who guarded the city gate started talking after they left. Hey, is that true? The first elder actually personally accompanied a person to look around the city? What is the origin of that girl? The third elder unexpectedly lose face? And do you see that the elder was obviously favoring Su Luo and make the third elder lose face? This is really different. Could it be that you haven't noticed? Emperor grade pill. That girl even gave away an emperor grade pill. That's really making people spit out blood from jealousy, okay? Why didn't I get seriously injured? Why am I not Huang Yi? Many people had a lot of regrets in their hearts. Purgatory City was very large. Su Luo knew it a long time ago. But when the first elder took her to fly in midair and looked down from a high altitude, the feeling became more obvious. At a glance, the city wall was so broad, nearly unable to see the end. This is the main city, but it's a bit small. The first elder personally acted as a guide for Su Luo. Post-admission, points exchange, and respective transactions could be completed here. With the introduction from the first elder, Su Luo looked down. This is a bit small. In the radius of tens of miles, there were many shops and the people were bustling with activity. There are so many people in Purgatory City. It's very similar to the city on the outside, but Su Luo knew that any of these people who walk on the street could cause a foul wind and a rain of blood. When they get to the outside world. This is the outer city. The ordinary people live here. The elder smiled and flew for another half an hour with Su Luo. In this half hour, Su Luo leaped countless mountains and came to the inner city with the first elder. The inner city was not wide expanse of flat land, but rather mountain ranges rise and fall, towering into the clouds. Under the dazzling sunshine, the misty mountains made people feel like it was a paradise. This is the inner city. The elder smiled and explained to Su Luo. The white tower in front is called the Purgatory Tower. No one in Purgatory City doesn't know about the Purgatory Tower. Zian will explain it to you later. Then the elder strolled around with Su Luo, pointed to one of the mountain peak, and said to Su Luo, "That blue cloud peak is my residence. Miss Su will live in the blue cloud peak for the time being." No. One caused bloodbath, sanguinary slaughter. Chapter 1913, Settle Down for Su Luo, has greatly offended the third elder. The first elder was really worried about Su Luo's safety, but he couldn't explain what the city master said to him to the third elder, so he was in a bit of a dilemma. Su Luo nodded. It was fine if she was alone without company, but with Beichen Ing and the others, she must be responsible for their lives. So living in the first elder's place, at least she don't have to worry about being schemed against by the third elder. By the way, can't those mountains outside the city being lived in? Su Luo just saw the mountains shrouded in mist, which seemed to be mysterious and gave her a sense of danger. The first elder smiled and shook his head. There are many beasts living in the mountains outside the city, the most powerful king of beasts. Even an old man like me can't do anything, who could live in peace. It is because of this that there is a distinction between inner and outer the city. Seeing Su Luo confused, the first elder smiled again and said, "However, that's really the best place for you to gain points in the future. Compared with the Angel Castle, you can kill those magical beasts, and the points will increase faster." The elder thought that it was too early to tell Su Luo about the elite training camp, so he planned to settle for the time being and first determine Su Luo's strength. They soon arrived in Blue Cloud Peak. It was the place where the first elder lived. The entire Blue Cloud Peak was steep and towering into the sky. The ancient trees around it had been there for thousands of years. The trees were green and full of life. There was a dense spirit in the forest and the mountains. Su Luo took a deep breath. The dewdrops on the tree leaves had a sweet fragrance, making people become intoxicated. Good place. Su Luo was extremely satisfied with the living environment. The first elder left his servant to Su Luo. He flicked his sleeves away, Not even a wisp of smoke he bring away, and went back to his residence on the top of the mountain. Because with his status as the first elder, it was not appropriate for him to handle those trivial matters. Seeing this servant, Su Luo sighed deeply. Really worthy of being the first elder servant. He looked handsome with refined facial features. The most unusual thing was the air he gave. Just one glance, he could give a person a calm and peaceful feeling, making people have a favorable impression of him. What makes Su Luo sigh the most was the strength of this servant. It was at the commander rank. A little servant was stronger than several people in Su Luo's side, made her feel ashamed and want to cover her face and run away. Under the blow from the servant, Ziyin and the others were totally desperate, but they had developed a strong motivation. Perhaps this was the purpose of the first elder to send this servant over. This servant, like his temperament, had a nice name called Qing Feng. Qing Feng brought Su Luo and the others into the courtyard on the hillside. He said with a clear voice and a smile, "This will be the residence in the future. If there is any dissatisfaction, you can bring it up at any time." This building was located in the hillside, covered a wide area, with pavilions that were quite exquisitely constructed. Su Luo's group of people looked around and expressed their satisfaction. Along the way, they were already exhausted for a long time. Everyone found a room and rested. A red sun rose from the east, and the early morning light shone through the thin mist in this quiet mountain villa. Knock, knock, knock. A clear knock sounded from outside Su Luo's door. Su Luo yawned and got up. Opening the door, there were two girls stood outside. It looked like acquaintances. No. One Qing Feng, cool breeze, figure pure and honest. Chapter 1914. Settle down 5. One was Lan Yi. The other one was Huang Yi. At this time, two people, one of them was holding a copper basin with hot water, and the other one was looking at Su Luo coldly. Su Luo glanced at Huang Yi and said with a smile, yet not a smile, "It seems that the effect of emperor-grade blood-clotting pill is pretty good." Su Luo looked at the two of them with a smile and turned back to the room. Huang Yi's expression changed, and finally she took a deep breath, suppressed all the emotions, went into the room holding the copper basin, and put the copper basin on the shelf in the bathroom. The difference was like heaven and hell, from the direct disciple to a humble maid that served others. Su Luo walked to the copper basin. When she passed by the lawn, one foot silently stretched out. Su Luo seemed to be unaware and still passing by. There was a smile on Huang Yi and Lan Yi's faces. Before they could be happy, however, the smile on their faces froze. Because Su Luo stepped directly on that foot. One only heard a cracking sound. The bone was shattering into pieces, accompanied by Lan Yi's awful shriek. "Ah! It hurts!" Lan Yi's tears of pain rolled down. Her ankle was almost numb. Seeing the pain of the Lan Yi, Huang Yi stepped forward with a cold face and arrogantly accused Su Luo. "Don't think that with the first elder protecting you, you can do whatever you want and offend our third elder. You are dead in Purgatory City. Are the third elder have more authority than the first elder?" Su Luo sowed dissension. "You're going to die soon." Huang Yi sneered. "Just wait until I recover my strength. You will see. I don't know why you make us come here. It's impossible for us to serve you well, but instead we could take your life at any time." Huang Yi was very frank about her thoughts. The Emperor blood-clotting pill did not fully restore Huang Yi's strength. Now her cultivation was less than half recovered. Su Luo raised her lips and looked at her with a faint smile. Then she extended her white fingers and shook them in front of Huang Yi. "Do you understand?" Huang Yi frowned. "What do you mean?" Lan Yi and Huang Yi looked at each other and did not understand. Suddenly, one only saw a black shadow flash by from the jade-like palm, and this black shadow went straight towards Huang Yi's face. Not to mention that Huang Yi now only had 50% of her strength. Even if she was in her peak state, she couldn't dodge this slap. "Pa!" There was a loud slapping sound in the silent air. "You!" Huang Yi covered her left face and stared at Su Luo incredulously. The tears of grievance in her eyes were mixed with fury, which made her almost bite her gums. Su Luo glances at her with interest and slowly blew the palm of her right hand, as if she wanted to blow away the disgusting and filthy thing. Then she slowly said a sentence. "Don't hit this young lady's hand with your face." These words really match with Su Luo's lofty attitude. It's just that was really preposterous. Huang Yi was so angry. What does it mean to hit Su Luo's hand with her face? She's the one who was slapped? Okay. How could there be such shameless people in this world? Ziyin had already come earlier when Su Luo slapped Huang Yi's face. Seeing that Huang Yi was bullied so miserably by Su Luo, they all laughed heartlessly. Under the group of people's watchful eyes, Huang Yi felt more and more embarrassed. Her pair of burning eyes stared at Su Luo and shouted, "You are too much of a bully." Chapter 1915, Settle Down 6, I just bullied you, so what? Su Luo's enchanting red lips evoked a smile, yet not a smile. If you have the ability, you can bully back. What does it mean to be arrogant? What does it mean by bullying too much? What does it mean to have a strong backing? Su Luo showed it perfectly. You! Huang Yi's complexion turned red, covered her face, and quickly ran out. You're too much. Master won't spare you. Lan Yi left a threatening sentence to Su Luo and quickly ran after Huang Yi. Ha ha ha, so funny. Ziyin patted Su Luo on the shoulder, laughing until she almost unable to breathe. Hit your hand with her face? Bah, Luo, you're so funny. Bei Chening was laughing in the room. Finding a chair to lie down, his stomach was cramped from laughing. Would that be a problem? What if they poisoned the foods or the drinks? After Lan Xian smiled, he raised a question out of concern. Anya Ming's thin lips rose, his eyes were black and as bright as the stars. If they want to bring about their own doom, he said and smiled to Su Luo, because he knew that Su Luo understood what he meant. Indeed, like what Anya Ming said, if they want to bring about their own doom. But it was evident that Huang Yi and Lan Yi were really courting death. Don't know how the Lan Yi consoled Huang Yi. Soon, Huang Yi wiped away her tears and cheered up. In the evening, the food was sent in. There were a lot of dishes, chicken, duck, fish, birds, had everything that one expects to find a table full. Lan Yi and Huang Yi hanged their heads and waited on the side. At this time, the two people looked as calm as water and well-behaved, as if nothing had happened in the morning. So many dishes, did you two make it yourselves? Su Luo looked at Lan Yi and Huang Yi with a smile. There were not many servants in the mountain villa. It was personally made by this maidservant. If Miss Su is afraid to eat, this maidservant is willing to try first. When she spoke of the word maidservant, Huang Yi almost gnashed her teeth in anger. It was obvious that she had deep resentment towards these people. Before Su Luo could speak, Huang Yi stepped forward, picked up the chopsticks and quickly used the chopstick to eat each dish. Then, she put down her chopsticks, stood aside respectfully, and made a gesture to invite Su Luo. She had tried all of them. If Su Luo still didn't dare to eat it, she would be a coward and could be looked down on. Is it hard to make these dishes? Su Luo looked at Huang Yi with a smile. Huang Yi lowered her eyes, making people had difficulty to see the emotions on her face. Her voice was faint, but still clear. Cooking for Miss, it's not hard at all. These words, if they were listened carefully, one could hear the sound of her grinding her teeth. Su Luo heard the words and laughed lightly. Ziyin and the other also laughed. Su Luo was like teasing a puppy, teasing Huang Yi. Miss Huang Yi really considerate, but I can't eat these dishes. Su Luo spread out her hands and expressed her frustration. Miss Su is afraid to eat them. Huang Yi suddenly looked up, staring coldly at Su Luo. I can't afford the filial piety of Miss Huang Yi, so you should present this filial piety to someone who can afford it. Su Luo smiled to Qingfeng. Pack all these dishes and send them to Bright Moon Hall. It said that Miss Huang Yi personally made them and already tasted them herself. They're not poisonous. The Bright Moon Hall was the residence of the third elder. No! Huang Yi was anxious when she heard it. Chapter 1916. Settle Down 7. She didn't know Su Luo would do this. Those dishes were indeed have problems. It was only because she took the antidote earlier, so she was fine. No good? right? The Bright Moon Hall is so far away, and the dishes will be cold when they are delivered. Su Luo looked toward Ching Feng with a smile. In that case, send these dishes to the mountain peak. I think the first elder will like it. When Huang Yi heard this, her body was shaking, almost on the verge of collapse. The poison in the dish was colorless and tasteless. It was a slow-acting poison. If it was taken for a long time, it could make people lose their spirit power. This medicine was originally formulated by the first elder. Huang Yi was about to cry, no way. Huang Yi firmly refused Su Luo's proposal. However, at this time, Su Luo smiled treacherously. No, but this miss says that it's fine. As she said that, Su Luo nimbly raised her hand and sent Ching Feng away. Ching Feng glanced at Huang Yi sympathetically. In ordinary days, Huang Yi followed the third elder. She was as proud as a peacock. Her eyes were slanted to the top of the head. No one could have imagined that she would have such a day. Ching Feng smiled, turned around, and went out. Don't go. Huang Yi quickly chased him, but when she passed by Su Luo stretched out her foot like what Lonnie did in the morning. Thud. Huang Yi, in a moment of desperation, was unprepared and fell directly onto the ground. You! Huang Yi turned her head and yelled angrily at Su Luo. Su Luo spread out her hand. Want to hit my hand with your face again? She looked at Huang Yi with a smile. At this time, Lonnie curled up in the corner and shivered. She could not care about Huang Yi. If those dishes were sent to the mountain peak, then how will the first elder react? Su Luo glanced at Lan Yi and said to Huang Yi with a smile, Look, this is the reaction that you should have. Learn from your junior sister. You did it on purpose. Huang Yi stared at Su Luo angrily, with a sinister coldness in her eyes. Su Luo looked at her with a smile and did not answer. You deliberately asked us to come here, because if you didn't do so, we would be taken away by Master. Then you wouldn't have been able to punish us. Huang Yi stared at Su Luo and analyzed it clearly. With a smile on her lips, Su Luo leisurely played with the thumb ring on her finger. But after you brought us here, you don't trust us to serve you, afraid that we would poison you. There's a trace of desperation in Huang Yi's cold eyes. In fact, you guessed it right. We want to kill you for insulting our master. Su Luo still smiling. Her smile was still as gentle as before. So you intentionally provoke us and give us a lot of freedom. Speaking of this, Huang Yi's figure shook. She really felt desperate, because she was like a chess piece in Su Luo's hand. She wasn't aware before that every step that she took was done in accordance with Su Luo's plan. Then, we put the slow-acting, highly toxic poison in the dishes. The poison was refined by the first elder. So even if the city master blames us, the first elder won't be able to escape the responsibility. This was our plan, and you were taking advantage of it. There were tears in her eyes, but Huang Yi stubbornly refused to let them fall. She stared at Su Luo and Saeed. Originally, you want to send those dishes to the Bright Moon Palace. If we don't object, maybe it would have been fine. Now those dishes was sent to the mountain peak. Hearing Huang Yi's analysis, Lan Yi's figure trembled even more. At this moment, Lan Yi had fully understood their upcoming fate. Chapter 1917. Settle down 8. Huang Yi stared at Su Luo. There was a strong suppressed anger and fear in her eyes. She stared at Su Luo, seemed to want to deeply engrave her face in her heart. Finally, she slowly spoke out her conclusion. You use this method to make us come over, and when Master can't oversee it, you plan to let us make mistakes, and then you will hand us over to the first elder to deal with. You really did it neat and tidy. Su Luo, I have to say that Huang Yi, can't help but admire you. Su Luo leisurely stood up, patted the dust that didn't exist on her dress. Her eyes slightly hooked, and looked at the Huang Yi with a faint smile. Are you finished? You are really hateful. Huang Yi said angrily. It's almost time. Why hasn't Ching Feng come back? Su Luo's eyes glanced at the door. At this moment, Ching Feng's figure happened to appear. He also brought a group of people behind him, led by an elderly man, the master of the criminal law hall, Lung Xingtian. Lung Xingtian looked about the same age as the first elder. His facial features were like being cut by a knife. He was extremely cold. His expression looked solemn, seemed like a dark cloud pressing down. He looked threatening, giving people a strong sense of oppressive feeling. Lung Xingtian's indifferent eyes swept over Su Luo, but did not stop. Then he coldly looked at Huang Yi and Lan Yi. Dare to try to murder the first elder. The crime is unforgivable. Come, take away the convict. Under Lung Xingtian's command, a group of people behind him rushed up toward Huang Yi and Lan Yi like wolves. Then they ruthlessly took them away without any tender, protective feelings for the fairer sex. In this process, the corner of Su Luo's mouth always had a smile. Lung Xingtian's eyes turned on Su Luo and gave her a cold stare. He was very dissatisfied and snorted, "If you don't have strength, don't make trouble." Then, the large group of people carried Huang Yi and left quickly. They come and go fast. After they left, the tense and oppressive atmosphere suddenly eased. Ziyin took a deep breath and patted her chest. The Hall Master Lung is still so serious and frightening. He has not changed at all. He seemed to have a problem with me. Su Luo touched her chin and said thoughtfully. Ziyin glanced at Su Luo angrily. Hall Master Lung is not specifically targeted you. He is always cold and indifferent, and really hate people who cause trouble the most. Beichening patted Su Luo on the shoulder with a smile and gave thumbs up with praise. I didn't expect that those two girls were being sent away by you so soon. This method is really neat and tidy. From the beginning, I didn't think about keeping them. Su Luo shook her head unhappily. Huang Yi and Lan Yi wanted to take our lives. Why should I spare them? But at that time, the third elder was there. It's not good to kill them in front of the third elder, so I used an indirect method. Moreover, there was only 1,000 miles to be a thief, and not 1,000 miles to prevent thieves one. She didn't want to be distracted in the future. So she cleaned up the house and spilled the dirty water on the third elder. This way of killing two birds with one stone, only a fool unwilling to do it. Are you sure those two girls will be executed? Beichening was not convinced. Dare to try to murder the first elder if they're not executed, so why not just tell everyone that anyone can murder the first elder? Ziyin smiled very insidiously. So this time, Huang Yi and Lan Yi will definitely die. Even third elders wouldn't dare to plead for leniency. What if she pleads? The first elder said. Could it be that you really incite them to harm me? How will the third elder be at that time? If that moment comes, how could the third elder deal with it? Note, 1. Impossible to be cautious and be on guard at all times. There's always the possibility of negligence. Chapter 1918. Settle down 9. So, even if the third elder bit her gums in hatred, she could only suppress her hatred and wait to retaliate in the future. Miss Su, the first elder asked you to have a good rest, and you will take the aptitude test tomorrow. Qing Feng said calmly. But when he looked at Su Luo, for a moment, there was a glimmer of envy in his eyes. Aptitude test, not everyone could go. What aptitude test? Genius training camp? Qing Feng's calm voice carried a hint of envy. It's really genius training camp? Ziyin was suddenly surprised and looked at Qing Feng with some disbelief. Did the first elder said it himself? Yes, Qing Feng said with a smile. What's genius training camp? Su Luo asked Ziyin with a puzzled face. It could be seen from her words just now that Ziyin must know something. Ziyin smiled like a gorgeous summer flower. She said with great envy, the genius training camp, as the name implies, is to take in the geniuses from all over the continent and use the best resources to cultivate them into the most genius evildoer. To tell the truth, that's where the real geniuses gather. It's very, very difficult to get in. For those of us in Purgatory Inner City, it could take a few years before we could enter, and the threshold is very high. Ziyin's eyes glistened. The lowest is commander rank. The lowest is commander rank. Su Luo's heart slightly moved. Such kind of standard, the people inside was indeed really amazing. All kinds of cultivation resources in the genius training camp are the best, so the people rarely come out after entering. I heard that one of them stayed in the camp for 100 years. Ziyin thought that it was incredible. but we can't accompany you to take the test together. Ziyin sighed with regret. Because the assessment qualification of the Genius Training Camp was the commander rank, she and Beichening have not reached it yet. If she was promoted according to normal cultivation, it would take many years for Ziyin to be qualified for the Genius Training Camp. But now she had reached the peak of 10th rank, and it's possible to be promoted to the commander rank at any time, which made her full of expectations. If you can't get in, then I'm also, Su Luo creased her brows. Everyone came to Purgatory City. She couldn't leave them behind. However, before Su Luo finished speaking, he was interrupted by Beichening. Please don't, Luo. Have you forgotten the original intention of us coming to Purgatory City? Our purpose is to cultivate and become stronger. So, you mustn't say anything like giving up. Beichen Ying's expression was more serious than ever. Yeah, Luo, the Genius Training Camp is not only consist of geniuses from Purgatory City, but also geniuses from the same material plane. There are the best teachers, the best resources, the best conditions, and the place where countless talents dream to go. How can you give it up? Ziyin looked very serious. Don't worry, we will certainly take good care of ourselves in the outside, cultivate well, go into the Genius Training Camp earlier. Don't worry. Ziyin knew that when Master asked Su Luo to come to Purgatory City, he had already planned to let her enter the Genius Training Camp, because only when she goes there could Su Luo make rapid progress. Seeing that everyone was so serious, Su Luo suddenly chuckled. Chapter 1919, Settle Down 10, Why are you guys so serious? Whether I could get in or not still needs to be assessed. Su Luo smiled and shook her head. The commander rank is the lowest standard. I think the chance of me going in is very small, because now Su Luo was only at the peak of 10th rank. Although it only needed an opportunity to be promoted to the commander rank, but it was unknown when the opportunity would come. The next day, before Su Luo woke up, she went to the Genius Training Camp for the assessment, and the whole Purgatory City became noisy. Are you kidding me? The Genius Training Camp is only assessed once a year, and the assessment time should not be today. What about it? They don't even attach importance to the third elder. It's said that today, the three elders who hadn't been seen the head or the tail will send her to the assessment together. Do you know what the most crucial problem is? What is it? I heard that girl. She is only at the 10th rank. Whoa. Suddenly everyone was shocked, because everyone knew that in the Genius Training Camp, the lowest standard is the commander rank. The 10th rank was not even qualified for the assessment, was it? Privilege. This is simply the abuse of privilege. It's not fair at all, treating the rules as a decoration. Many people swearing in defiance. What's absolutely fair in this world? If you have the ability, you can let the three elders give you privileges. You say, why did the three elders give her an easy way? I heard that she has a diamond token in her hand. It said that it was given by the city master himself. It said that the girl is very beautiful, 100 times more beautiful compared to the one who's capable of causing the downfall of a city or state. Hey, even dare to make up the city master's affairs. Are you tired of living? Everyone did not dare to open up the discussion anymore, only cursed in their hearts. After a long time, suddenly there was a laughing voice. Hey, I say, what are you anxious for? For so many years in Purgatory City, have you ever seen a 10th rank strength enter the Genius Training Camp? Is there any? After listening to this sentence, everyone immediately laughed. Yes, even the commander rank's chance, only 1 out of 100, let alone the 10th rank. This was simply the rhythm leading to death. After thinking about it, everyone relaxed and laughed, waiting to see how the legendary Miss Su, who was specially favored by the city master, would return in tears and run away. Su Luo followed the three elders to the assessment early in the morning. Naturally, she could not hear these irritating words, but Ziyin and the others listened to them completely. She was so annoyed that she could not wait to fight with them, but was stopped by Beichening. Although Luo is only at the 10th rank, her strength is obvious to all. Don't you believe that Luo can pass the assessment? Beichening said with a smile. Of course, I know Luo's strength. Although now she is at the 10th rank, a commander ranked may not be her opponent. How about at that time with the arrogant variant 10-winged angel? Wasn't it C. Luo who killed it? So, we'll just wait. When the Luo assessment comes out from the assessment successfully, those people will slap their own face. How great is that? Bei Chen shrugged his shoulders. But Genius Training Camp, it's really hard to get in. Ziyin sighed deeply. Naturally, she hoped that Su Luo could go in, but she didn't have great expectations, because she knew it was really hard, really hard. Chapter 1920. Assessment 1. Because of the First Elder's personal order, Su Luo had this very rare opportunity. The assessment of the Genius Training Camp is divided into 3 levels. The first was to break into the Heavenly Puppet Array. Qingfeng sent Su Luo to the outside of the Heavenly Puppet Array, then backed away a few steps, raised his hand, and motioned to Su Luo. If you can complete this in 2 hours, you could be considered to have passed this stage. 2 hours? The time was really harsh. Ziyin earnestly told Su Luo, if it's too difficult, remember that life is the most important thing. If the first time is not successful, there's still next time. Many people took the assessment many times before they could enter the Genius Training Camp. Bei Chen also said with a smile, at the very least, next time we could take the assessment together. Will you die if you don't say those disheartening words? Su Luo gave her little friend an unhappy glance. I know, safety first. I cherish my life more than any of you. After making it clear, she turned around. Su Luo looked at the black wooden door in front of her, took a deep breath, and slowly pushed the door. The black wooden door was about 10 meters long and 20 meters high. Behind it was an oval yurt-like building. It looked very huge. As for what's inside, only those who had taken the assessment would know. The matter about Su Luo's assessment for the Genius Training Camp was spread, so more and more people flocked to the Heavenly Puppet Array, and one of them was a mighty and imposing group. Led by Lu Yi, she was followed by a group girls in the prime of their youth. Each of them looked stern, as if they want to smash the place. People from the Bright Moon Hall. A person with a sharp eye recognized them at once. That's Miss Lu Yi. I didn't expect Miss Lu Yi brought group of people in person. What are they doing? I don't know. It looks like it's going to kill an enemy. Passers-by 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on were confused. They discussed it, but they still did not know why. Get out of the way! Get out of the way! Lu Yi brought a group of people to come over, and soon, people on the road automatically get out of the way. Lu Yi brought those people and occupied the best position. There was a large screen on the right side of the door, which they could clearly see the scene inside. Lu Yi glanced at the screen, and then glanced at the crowd. At one glance, she recognized Ziyin. Suddenly, her beautiful face looked fierce. I wondered who it is. It turned out that it's Holy Maiden Ziyin. I didn't expect you to be so idle. Lu Yi's eyes were vicious. Huang Yi and Lan Yi were schemed. All of their cultivations were abolished, and they were still punished to be sent to the mountain to do bitter work, which made her, who had always been friends with them, became angry. She originally wanted to lead someone to rush to Blue Cloud Peak, arrest Su Luo and the others, and beat them up, but was stopped by the third elder, so Lu Yi chose a roundabout way. She didn't believe that a small 10th rank could pass the assessment of the Genius Training Camp. Therefore, she brought the disciples of Bright Moon Hall and came here in a magnificent way to see Su Luo's appearance. Ziyin and Bright Moon Hall already had an animosity, but now there were even more animosity. Ziyin folded her arms, and her cold eyes swept over Lu Yi. Without saying a word, Ziyin turned her eyes to the screen. Ziyin's expression and action could be summed up in a word: ignore. Ziyin, how dare you ignore me? Lu Yi almost burst into anger. Chapter 1921. Assessment 2. Lu Yi was hot-tempered, like an artillery that ignite easily. Otherwise, she wouldn't try to find trouble for Su Luo so openly and without fear. The corner of Ziyin's lips coldly drawn upward. Her eyes remained still and continued to ignore her completely. So what if I ignore you? Ziyin spoke leisurely and indifferently. Lu Yi was so angry that she's immediately wanted to rush up, but her group of people tried their very best to persuade her. Senior sister, you can't use force without authorization in Inner City. Calm down, calm down. Lu Yi was so angry that her nose was crooked, but there was nothing she could do. Finally, she snorted coldly, pointed to Xian, and put down her words fiercely. Just you wait. The title of the Holy Maiden must belong to Serene. You took it away, but you're going to spit it out soon. Serene was the legendary Serene Fairy, the disciple that the third elder most proud of, and also the leader of the younger generation in the Bright Moon Hall. Now the Serene Fairy was in the genius training camp, so she wouldn't come out easily, but this didn't prevent her junior sisters from pulling her tiger skin. If she have the ability, ask her to take it by herself. Ziyin coldly left the sentence. Senior sister Serene is in the top 50 in the genius training camp. What about you? You are not even qualified for the assessment. How could you compare with senior sister Serene? The expression on Lu Yi's face was greatly taunting, and she looked at Ziyin with a sneer. Ziyan's hands on her side were tightly clenched. Her white fingers were clenched into fists, and the veins on the back of her hand were throbbing. You're right. I currently don't even have the qualification for the assessment, but I'm sure Luo can pass the assessment. Ziyin recovered her calm look and said lightly, Soon, Serene will know what an opponent is. Serene Fairy, from childhood to adult, had carried so much praise that she considered everybody and everything beneath her notice and developed her arrogant and cold personality. But she would soon discover that some people were born to beat her. Lu Yi and the others naturally did not believe it, but she came to see Su Luo became a joke. Ha 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 ha, Lu. He put her hands on her hips and laughed wildly. Finally, she could hardly stand up. It's so funny. It's so funny. Ha ha ha, an outside girl. Don't know which corner she come from, trying to compare with senior sister Serene? In this world, are there any jokes funnier than this? Not only did Lu Yi laugh, but the group behind her also laughed heartily. Their bodies was shaking with laughter, which made their stomach cramp. In addition, passers-by 1, 2, 3, 4, and others all looked at Ziyin with sympathetic eyes, and seeing her like a fool. They totally agreed with Lu Yi. Serene Fairy. Her talent was like a mountain, standing high above everyone's head. How to surpass her? Who could possibly surpass her? Her strength was already recognized in the whole Purgatory City. In countless pairs of contemptuous or ridiculing or cynical eyes, Ziyin, Bei Chening, and the other were almost furious, but soon they took a deep breath to suppress their rage. Bei Chening said lightly, Time will prove everything. Yes, time will prove everything. Ziyin said solemnly. They looked at each other, saw the firmness in each other's eyes, and then their eyes fell on the huge screen. The screen lighted up at this moment. A petite figure appeared on the white screen. At this time, Su Luo in the heavenly puppet gate had no idea that they had been arguing because of her in the outside. Chapter 1922, Assessment 3, Inside. The surroundings were dark, so dark that she couldn't even see her hand in front of her. Suddenly, a white light came out from above to below. The light enveloped Su Luo. In a small range, Su Luo's figure was revealed on the screen. There was silence all around. However, Su Luo is not relaxed, but more alert. She was vigilant. Her eyes watched attentively. Her ears listened intently to all direction and did not let go of any details. Click, 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 a clear footstep came from behind. The sound of the footsteps were firm, steady, regular, and mechanical. Puppets! Su Luo quickly turned around and looked straight behind her. Sure enough, it was puppets. These puppets, Su Luo was no stranger with it. Su Luo already met them before when she went to Roaming Dragon's secret territory. However, at that time, those puppets were not killed by Su Luo. They were put down in the hands of the Battle God Puppet. At the present, Battle God Puppet was lying weakly in Su Luo's space because it had no spirit power. When it senses these puppets, the body that was originally lying flat and stiff like a corpse suddenly moved. The corner of Su Luo's mouth was slightly curved. She knew that the Battle God Puppet wanted them. It was indeed walking on the iron shoe until it broke, but still couldn't find it, only to find it without slightest effort. Su Luo originally wanted to find some treasure with spirit force to feed the battle god puppet. After all, now she had offended the third elder. With the protection of the battle god puppet, her security will be much higher. However, even if there was any object with spirit force, it couldn't compare with these puppets, because these puppets were simply exquisite food tailored for battle god puppets. Su Luo could feel the battle god puppet in her space. Staring longingly at those disciples and descendants, his body was shaking with excitement. Su Luo lost her temper, rolled her eyes, and said, "Old man, what's the rush? Those little puppets will certainly be yours." The battle god puppet's hoarse voice made a proud laugh, a little satisfied, and this time he continued to lie down peacefully. Just now, when he sat up, he consumed his little remaining spirit power. 3 puppets moved towards Su Luo mechanically. The strength of these 3 puppets was not weak. All of them are in the middle of 10th rank. If they were put in the outside, they could dominate. But in Su Luo's eyes, they were just lunch for the battle god puppet. 3 puppets came into the circle. For a moment, they, who were originally dull, stupid, and acted mechanically, suddenly looked up with red light in their eyes. Only for a while, they seemed to become living human beings, and Su Luo seemed to be their enemy. There's no sound, no eye contact, but the 3 puppets took the same action and rushed up in a triangle shape and surrounded Su Luo. The battle has begun, outside the heavenly puppet gate. At this time, countless of people all stretched their necks, one by one, watched attentively, and held their breath, looking at the battle inside excitedly. The 3 puppets were very good both in speed and strength. When they attacked together, their strength more than tripled. Su Luo count beat them in a short time. Lu looked for a while, and she saw that in the screen, Su Luo sometimes dodged, sometimes ran away, and couldn't help but sneered. How dare she want to go to the genius training camp with such strength? Isn't that a joke? There were quite a few people who agree with Lu Yi's opinion, and many people also gave comment and expressed their opinions. I remember the last time when I went to the genius training camp. This level is a very easy thing to pass. It was almost as easy as lifting my hand to pass it. I haven't seen such a thrilling way to pass it. Chapter 1923, Assessment 4. Therefore, the minimum standard for the assessment of the genius training camp is the commander rank. It's reasonable. The first level is done like this. Alas, I don't think this girl Su Luo could get in. The first elder, make an error of judgment this time. What's the city master see in her? For a while, countless of negative comments arose. Those negative words surrounded Ziyin and the others, buzzing in their ears. Lu Yi was even more hateful. She deliberately stood beside Ziyin and kept attacking them with words. Still want to compare with Senior Sister Serene? Bah! She don't even fit to carry to Senior Sister Serene's shoes. Lu Yi sneered. Her eyes was full of sarcasm. As Lu Yi said that, all the people behind her burst out laughing and sneering. Someone could actually compare to Junior Sister Serene? Where? A frivolous voice came from mid-air. Senior Brother Lin. When Lu Yi saw the person that's just arrived, her eyes were glistening. Lin Banli, of 5 years ago, he went to the genius training camp, had a very good talent. Moreover, he was also one of the many pursuers of the Serene Fairy. However, after Serene Fairy entered the genius training camp, she soon surpassed him in ranking list, but he was not envious and continued to pursue Serene Fairy. Behind Lin Banli was a young man in white. The young man in white was cold and handsome. His eyes were as black as ink, but they were cold and indifferent. His serious look was making strangers wouldn't go near. The young man in white was also part of the genius camp. In terms of ranking, he was even higher than Lin Banli. Who can compare with Junior Sister Serene? Pointed out. The fan in Lin Banli's hand opened with a loud sound and leisurely shook it. Louis glanced at Ziyin contemptuously and then pointed to the screen. There, the one inside. Ziyin said this girl will certainly surpass Senior Sister Serene in the future. Ha ha ha. Senior Brother Lin, do you think this joke is funny? Lin Banli's eyes slowly swept towards the screen. After a few glances, The smile on the corner of his mouth slowly rose, looking at Su Luo from head to toe, and shook his head lightly. I heard that the first elder opened the assessment door for a little girl in the morning. I thought that the little girl have with good talent and strength that shocked the first Elfir, but I didn't expect that she's such Feisty. Although Lin Banley didn't say everything, everyone could hear his contempt. In contrast to Lin Banley's contempt, the young man in white behind him looked at the screen lightly, but his expression was more serious. After hearing Lin Banley's words, Lu Yi immediately in a good mood. Then she told Lin Banley and complained, "This girl's strength is not so good, but she show off too much. You don't know, she dared to speak out against my master in front of everyone, and she also dared to handle Huang Yi and Lonnie. Huang Yi and senior sister Serene are friends. If senior sister Serene knows that Huang Yi have become a waste now, she will be angry." Lin Banley was only smiling when she talked about the others, but she mentioned Serene Fairy. As the most loyal flower protector emissary of Serene Fairy, Lin Banley had straightened his chest this time, and he really did. Lin Banley frowned. He didn't expect that Luo Yichen would raise objections. "So you are optimistic about her?" Lin Banley's face fell in an instant. Luo Yichen still looked as indifferent as before, only frowned, and lightly said 2 words, "Look carefully." Chapter 1924. Assessment 5. Seeing that Luo Yichen was optimistic about Su Luo, Lin Banley couldn't help but be surprised. Based on Lin Banley's understanding of Luo Yichen, he knew that Luo Yichen was usually very stubborn and wouldn't praise someone easily. Therefore, Lin Banley looked at Su Luo with a little caution. But it seemed that he didn't find anything unusual. He couldn't help touching his nose and glanced at Luo Yichen in secret. Luo Yichen's face was serious. At this moment, he was looking at Su Luo on the screen. The corner of his cold mouth, beyond logic and above reason, was slightly moved up. This, Lin Banley thought it was extremely inconceivable. Could it be there was a crucial point that he did not see? Lin Banley had a moment of doubt about his way of looking at things. So once again, he carefully looked at Su Luo's back. Senior brother Luo's inside is usually good, but this time, this junior brother could not agree with you. Lin Banley didn't find anything abnormal. Seeing Su Luo's entangled with those small and weak puppets, he despised her a little. This girl is said to be talented, but the speed is too slow. When the 3rd stage comes, this shortcoming will end her assessment. Luo Yichen casually glanced at Lin Banley, moved his brows, and did not say where he stands. Ziyin smiled coldly. If Luo can pass the 3rd stage, what would you do? Before Lin Banley could speak, Lu Yi sneered. "Then I'll cut off my head and serve it as a stool for you. You said that yourself. I didn't force you." Ziyin was in a good mood and had a bright smile on her face. Was this 3rd stage easy for Su Luo? Lin Banley's eyes flickered slightly and raised his hand to stop Lu Yi for a while. Well, who would bet their heads? Girls don't know how to cherish themselves. Later, he took a token from his waist. It was a gold token. There were mostly silver tokens in the genius training camp. Gold tokens were still rare. "Let's bet points. Do you dare?" Lin Banley shook her silver token at Ziyin. Ziyin glanced at Lu Yi's neck with regret. With Lin Banley's cutting in, Lu Yi's head could not be used as a stool for a while, but points were also good, which was what she urgently needed. "How much do you want to bet?" Ziyin's eyes are half narrowed, and her face looked indifferent. "I'm afraid you can't take it out much. Since it's the bet for the 3rd stage, let's bet 300 points. Lin Banley laughed happily. In his opinion, it was already very good for Ziyin to have 300 points. Okay, 300 points is 300 points. No matter how small a mosquito is, it's still meat. Must not give away points for nothing. The corner of Ziyin's mouth rose coldly. "Tisk, do you really think that girl Su Luo will win?" Lu Yi snorted disdainfully. "Ride the donkey and read the play. Wait and see." Ziyin waved her hands at will. There are 5 stages in the first level. Ziyin believed that Su Luo could definitely come out safely. In order to be cautious, Ziyin also asked Luo Yichen to be a witness. Luo Yichen was used to be cold and cheerless in ordinary days, but this time he nodded his head and agreed. After the negotiations were over, all eyes focused again on the battle on the screen. At this time, Su Luo had killed 3 puppets, but it took 1 whole hour. Too weak. Lin Banley shook his head. Just as we were sighing, suddenly a surprise cry came out from the crowd. Those 3 puppets? Where are they? Chapter 1925, Assessment 6. With the reminder, everyone remembered. Where did the 3 puppets go? How did it disappear? Not only did the onlookers not understand this problem, but powerful people like Lin Banley, he also did not understand. Older brother Luo? Lin Banley was confused. However, when Lin Banley couldn't think of it, Luo Yichen's sword-like eyebrows also slightly furrowed. He slowly shook his head. I didn't see clearly. Lin Banley was very curious. Could it be there's a space bag in that girl's hand? However, most of the space bags were very small, only a few cubic meters at most. Those 3 puppets were tall and big. Could they fit in it? Even if she could put it in, why would she take those dead puppets back? As expected of a country girl who hasn't seen the world. The dead puppets is a pile of rubbish. She actually picked it up. Huh? Lu Yi laughed scornfully. Was this really the case? There was a hint of doubt in Lin Banley's eyes. In Heavenly Puppet Array, Su Luo did not waste any time to gather all the broken puppets she had killed. She directly gathered them into the space, because the battle god puppet was waiting with his mouth wide open for her to feed him. He chewed the delicious disciples and grandchildren in his mouth, and the battle god puppet did not forget to comment. The material is extremely inferior, and the taste is extremely bad. Su Luo glanced at him unhappily. Then, you don't want it anymore? The battle god puppet stared at Su Luo in an instant. Must not waste it. Su Luo. With the battle god puppet's appetite, these 3 puppets were just like 3 mosquitoes for humans, right? It seemed that the battle god puppet was really hungry. The first time, it took Su Luo 2 hours' time, but she didn't think that it was wasted because she thought it was worth it. In the second stage, 6 puppets soon appeared. The strength of these 6 puppets was almost the same as the previous 3. But because of the larger number, the array was also more complicated and the power was more than doubled. Su Luo nodded secretly in her heart. As expected, it was getting more and more difficult. Su Luo played with the 6 puppets for a while, only to smash them at once with a fist, smash their heads, and then took them into her space to serve as lunch for the battle god puppet. The third stage came on time. This time, there were 9 puppets came out together. It seemed that the number of puppets was the multiple of 3. The array of 9 puppets was not comparable to the 6, and the strength had doubled. Outside, many people held their breath and stared at the screen in full attention for fear of missing something. The smile on the corner of Lin Banley's mouth was slightly raised. At this time, he was leisurely swaying his fan and said slowly, "It seems that the game is going to end." The third stage he was assessed before. Although it seemed that there were only 3 more puppets than the second one, but those 9 puppets, each of which had the strength of the peak of 10th rank, they were even more powerful when they were put together on the battle array. At that time, he almost suffered a big loss because he underestimated the enemy, not to mention the witless little girl inside. Look, I already said her speed is no good, right? If I guess correctly, this girl will automatically surrender within 3 minutes. Looking at Su Luo, surrounded by 9 puppets, Lin Banley said with great certainty. Luo Yichen's face was solemn and indifferent. No one could see the emotion in his eyes. Chapter 1926, Assessment 7. But he also had to admit that Lin Banley was right. When a person fights with multiple people, the most important thing to pay attention to is not to be trapped in the center. Once surrounded, it would be extremely difficult to break out of the encirclement. Could it be that he was wrong about that girl? Wasn't that girl deliberately delayed the battle because she was studying the battle array? For a while, Luo Yichen was unsure. If at this time, there were still some people who insisted that Su Luo would win. It was Ziyin and the others. Seeing that the situation was very good, Louis mocked and ridiculed Ziyin. 300 points, take it out quickly. Ziyin gave her a cold glance. Who loses and who wins is still unknown. It is too early to say that now. How do you know that the person whose will take out the points is not going to be you? Haha. At this time, you actually still don't want to admit defeat. Then, I'll let you be proud for a while. Lu raised her chin coldly, with disapproval. At this time, suddenly, there was a change in the screen. Just when all the puppets surrounded Su Luo, every puppet smashed to the center of the circle with their most powerful fist. For a while, there was an unusually fiery scene in the screen. 9 puppets fell backwards one after another, unable to hold their strength, falling heavily to the ground, their entire bodies almost falling apart. Surrounded by 9 puppets in the middle, Su Luo received a powerful attack. Su Luo is very likely to be slapped into flesh mud, right? That's what many people think. But what's going on? Someone in the crowd exclaimed loudly. After the fire had dissipated, a figure came down from midair. Her skirt fluttered, and her posture was graceful and beautiful, making people practically look straight. How? How can this be? Wasn't that girl Su Luo got surrounded just now? How did it fly to the air? So, weren't the 9 puppets played by her? Hit yourself? Then did you hurt yourself? Then in this way, aren't those 9 puppets just got played by her? Hit herself and hurt herself? When the crowd saw this scene, they were shocked. Then their eyes lit up and their faces were red with excitement. They came to see the excitement. Naturally, the more unexpected it was, the better it was to see. But on the contrary to them, Lu Yi's face was rather ugly. When she was in a bad mood, Ziyin didn't forget to sneer a few times. Alas, it's someone's life. If it was the head that was bet before. With Ziyin's reminder, everyone remembered. Previously, Lu Yi said bluntly that if Su Luo could pass the 3rd stage, she would use her head as a stool. For a while, the eyes full of teasing all shot towards Lu Yi. Lu Yi was angry and embarrassed. She stood on the spot angrily, clenched her fist, and her face flushed red. Lin Banley sighed lightly, touched his chin, and said to Ziyin, "If one agreed to bet one must accept to lose, I'll give you 300 points." After getting the 300 points from Lin Banley, Ziyin was in a good mood. However, before she could put away the silver token, she was provoked by Lu Yi. Lu Yi's vicious eyes looked to Ziyin, overbearingly. "You still dare or not to bet? You speak?" Ziyin was in a good mood. 500 points, bet on the 4th stage. Su Luo will lose and withdraw. Lu Yi said her words fiercely. Ziyin tilted her head and didn't know what she was thinking. "Don't you have confidence in your friend? You don't dare to bet now?" Lu Yi was goading her into action. Chapter 1927, Assessment 8. She dared to be so confident because she knew that the number of puppets in the 4th array could not be compared with the first 3. "It's not that I'm afraid to gamble, but how about we also bet on the 5th array?" Ziyin said with a smile. The 4th array hadn't even done yet, but she want to bet on the 5th array right away? Isn't that being too confident about Su Luo? However, as far as Lu Yi concerned, it was just what she wanted. "Okay, bet 1,000 points on the 5th array." Lu Yi immediately clapped. "No problem." Ziyin confidently took the challenge. At this time, after she settled the puppets on the 3rd array, Su Luo had come to the 4th array. Seeing the puppets coming out of the 4th array, Su Luo's eyebrows slightly stirred up. It turned out to be 18. Moreover, the strength of these 18 puppets was much stronger than the previous ones, and the difficulty was greatly increased. Lin Banley slowly swayed his fan, looked at Ziyin, and sighed sadly. "This time, you will lose miserably." "That may not be the case." It was Luo Yichen who spoke. "You're still optimistic about her? That's just luck." Lin Banley took a suspicious glance at Luo Yichen. "Think back then, even with the strength of the commander rank, we still suffered a lot. Do you think she will pass with the strength of the measly 10th rank?" "She could pass," Luo Yichen said firmly. "You're really mad." Lin Banley didn't believe it at all. Luo Yichen didn't remind him. He just looked at the thin girl on the screen carefully, with a faint smile on his lips. Unexpectedly, Su Luo passed the 4th array after spending 4 hours. 500 points. In the quiet atmosphere, Ziyin did not forget to ask for points from Lu Yi. Lu Yi was so angry that her nose was crooked, but she couldn't cheat in public. She could only give 500 points to Ziyin angrily. But she said a few words fiercely. "Don't worry, you will lose 1,000 points later. Your wishful thinking will never come true." Ziyin replied proudly. It was so hard to get 1,000 points in the Angel Castle. Just after a while, she already obtained 800 points, and there would be another 1,000 points after this. Gambling is a good business with great profits. Ziyin thought proudly. In the heavenly puppet array, seeing that Su Luo easily came to the fifth array, many people stared deeply. Even Lin Banley's eyes were fixed on the screen without blinking, and there was some caution in their expression. Before this, he always thought that Su Luo relied on luck, but after she fought in 4 arrays, Lin Banley knew that luck could not come again and again. So the biggest possibility was strength. At this time, Su Luo had come to the 5th array. In the 5th array, it was dead silent and desolate. All around was extremely quiet, without a trace of life. The more so, the more cautious Su Luo was because she knew that the 5th array would not easy. The first 4 arrays were not that difficult for her. The reason why she didn't quickly knock down those puppets was because she was studying the similarities and fighting habits of these puppets. After analyzing the battle over and over again, Su Luo had been able to grasp the essence of it, so she passed quickly in the 4th array. At this moment, Su Luo's thin figure moved and flew quickly into the air. Bang! There was a clear exploding sound from where Su Luo was just standing. If she didn't dodge quickly, she would be badly mangled or mutilated now. Chapter 1928, Assessment 9. The way the puppets appeared this time was simply unimaginable. They unexpectedly popped out of the ground, one after another. In the end, they were numerous and close together. There were 81. Su Luo took a deep breath. 81. It's really deserved to be the last array. No wonder the Purgatory City only admitted one in a few years. The difficulty was really extraordinary. On the outside, a lot of people stared straight. Shit, 81? How can there be so many? Lin Banley exclaimed. He remembered that when he was assessed, there were 63. Mine was only 72. Luo Yichen said silently. His expression seemed a bit lonely. He was looking at the small figure in the screen. His eyes were full of surprise. Those who had been assessed knew that in the last array, the number of puppets that came out was different. It was not random. The number of puppets that came out was carefully calculated according to the comprehensive strength of the assessment candidates. In other words, the more talented the person is, the more puppets will come out, and 81 was already considered very high. The system is unlikely to be broken, right? How can that girl able to draw out 81 puppets? Lin Banley rubbed his eyes, found it hard to believe. He felt that the system was broken or the world was too crazy. Lu Yi didn't know the secret. She saw 81 puppets appeared closely around Su Luo. She clapped her hands excitedly and said, "See where you could flee this time? I think you're dead." Lin Banley felt sweaty and glanced at Lu Yi silently. But in his heart, he also agreed with what Lu Yi said. Although he didn't know why so many puppets came out, Lin Banley also thought that Su Luo was certainly couldn't pass this level. Because he knew that if that time he was confronted by 81 puppets, he would definitely fail. He thought that Su Luo was inferior to her, so he believed that Su Luo would certainly fail. At this time, heavenly puppet array. Su Luo stood to the ground on the tiptoe. Her body was as fast as lightning, and he was as graceful as a dragon swept through the 18 powerful puppets. Without using the gravity space, the strength of each of these puppets was comparable to her current cultivation. Su Luo still found it a bit difficult to deal with it. However, at this moment Su Luo did not intend to expose her cards, because there were still the 2nd and the 3rd level left. As for this level, everyone on the outside must have thought she would fail, right? Waiting for her to surrender? Su Luo suddenly looked back and smiled, showing 6 white teeth. The smile was gorgeous like fireworks. In an instant, all the people on the outside were stunned. At this moment, it seemed as if the time stayed forever still. What's called looking back with an enchanting smile? What's called without equal and capable of causing the downfall of a city. Just as everyone were shaking in amazement, Su Luo moved. only to see her lithe figure like a deity, walking lightly under the attacks of numerous puppets, with a graceful posture and a calm look, as if she was playing with these vicious puppets. In fact, Su Luo was really playing with them. During the first 3 arrays, because there were few puppets, she had enough time to study. After several tests and observations, Su Luo finally found a secret. The weakness of these puppets was not in the forehead or the eyes, but it was in the navel. Their navels were afraid of fire. So, when Su Luo was wandering and dodging, then later locking the target, he index finger condensed the fire of the Yun Luo Red Lotus, and then suddenly pierced the puppet's navel. Chapter 1929. Second level 1. What? Lin Banley asked in confusion. Her storage space is at least larger than yours. Luo Yichen smiled. More than 100 puppets were all put in it. If the storage space was not large enough, it would have been unable to contain it long ago. Lin Banley's eyes slightly narrowed. He suddenly thought that Serene once regretted that her storage space was too small. Thinking that he could send Serene's favorite gift, Lin Banley was in a good mood. He patted Luo Yichen on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Brother Luo, thank you very much." Luo Yichen looked at Lin Banley in confusion. Lin Banley did not explain, but his smile became brighter and brighter. In the light screen, the puppet had almost been cleaned up by Su Luo. After the last puppet was sent into her space, Su Luo clapped her hands to remove the dust that did not exist. 12 hours. Come out, come out. With a lively call, Su Luo stepped out of the heavenly puppet array. Seeing Su Luo came out safe and sound, many people were in complex mood. Su Luo acted as though there were nobody else present, walked towards Ziyin, and smiled lightly. Did you worry? No. Ziyin shook her head firmly. By the way, when we were idle and bored, we won some points. Hey, Louie girl from the Bright Moon Hall, where are you going? The second half of Ziyin's sentence was because she saw that Lu Yi was secretly wanted to run, so she rushed up to her, grabbed Lu Yi's collar, and demanded aggressively. 1,000 points. Lu Yi's heart felt extremely regretful, wished to SLSB herself in the forehead. She had saved 1,000 points for almost a year. Who would have thought that she would lost all of them today? She bet points with you? Su Luo pulled up her sleeve and walked slowly to Lu Yi. There's still a foolish spendthrift over there. He lost 300 points. Ziyin raised her eyebrows and looked towards Lin Banley. Su Luo was secretly happy. She was worried about what to do if Ziyin and the others didn't have enough points after she entered the genius training camp. She didn't expect that someone would give her a pillow when she felt sleepy, really just what she wanted. At this time, Lu Yi turned around and gave Su Luo a vicious glance, spitting out 3 words. You were cheating. No one said anything. Everyone also thought these words in their mind. Who would dare to speak out? Could it be that she was not afraid of punishment from the First Elder? Not afraid of the city master coming back to settle accounts afterwards? What did you say? Su Luo's eyebrows were twisted, holding Lu Yi's neck, and lifted her up high. I said, you were cheating. The system helped you cheat. Otherwise, how could you possibly come out? Lu Yi turned red, very stubbornly insisted on his opinions. Su Luo sneered and said, you are really bold. Does your master know? Do you dare to follow me to see the First Elder and say that in front of him? Lu Yi's face suddenly turned green, because she was not convinced and refused to admit it, so she slandered Su Luo. Who would dare to really ask this in front of the First Elder? Wasn't that just courting death? Seeing Lu Yi stump for words, Su Luo smiled coldly, loosened her hand, and threw her on the ground. She stepped on her abdomen with one foot, bent down, and sneered at her haughtily. It's right and proper to repay debts. Are all the people of Bright Moon Hall like you, owing debt, renege on the debt, and still splash foul water on the creditor's face? Justice was everywhere in this world. This was the moral high ground of Su Luo to denounce Lu Yi. The latter, with a black face spitting fire, was helpless and could only quietly took out her pathetic silver token. Chapter 1930. Second level 2. Lu Yi and her group of people came in an overbearing manner, but went away in dejection, This has somewhat damaged the Bright Moon Hall's prestige. Lin Banley looked at Su Luo. His eyes were narrowed for a moment, and his dark pupil was flashing with a calculating light. Su Luo felt a burning gaze behind her, which made her uncomfortable, so she looked back and glared at Lin Banley fiercely, and instead of staying, she led a victorious group of people to return. In Blue Cloud Peak, a group of people sat in a circle. Ziyin said first, Luo, how difficult is it? Are you confident in the next levels? Su Luo, with a relaxed face, chuckled. It's difficult, but not so much. In Final Fifth Array is quite difficult, but when I found the pattern, it was easy to break them. Moreover, she also let her battle god puppet stuffed himself, which should be Su Luo's biggest harvest. But the next two levels are going to be much more difficult. Ziyin said what she knows. The second level is in the Tianmeng Mountain. Tianmeng Mountain? Su Luo threw a grape into her mouth and pursed her lips. In theory, as long as you go from the foot of the mountain to the top of the mountain and get the blood-red flower from the top of Tianmeng Mountain in 24 hours, you will pass. Because the blood-red flower only bloomed for 24 hours, from the candidate's first step to the foot of Tianmeng Mountain, the blood-red flower will bloom. Ziyin said it very carefully, and Su Luo understood. Blood-red flower, it's interesting. Su Luo slightly raised her lips. Looking down the Tianmeng Mountain from the midair, you will find that it has 9 curves and 18 bends. More specifically, it consists of countless range in the shape of M lying horizontally. On the way up the mountain, there is only one M-shaped path running through countless horizontal ones. This path passes through 9 of the most dangerous terrain, that is, 9 monster-intensive areas, which is also known as Tianmeng's 9 Natural Stronghold Mountain Pass. Su Luo stroked her chin and said with a smile, It seems like it's difficult. Naturally, it's very difficult to pass through 9 mountain pass in 24 hours. In every assessment of the Genius Training Camp, 80% of the candidates will be eliminated at the Tianmeng's 9 mountain pass. You say, is it difficult or not? Ziyin sat beside the round table. Her hands were on her cheeks, and her eyebrows tightly furrowed. Qing Feng in the corner suddenly added a sentence. Tianmeng Mountain. This mountain pass is impossible to pass without being promoted to the commander rank. Qing Feng looked at Su Luo with unprecedented seriousness in his black eyes. And even if you were promoted to the commander rank, there's only 20% chance. Is there a special threshold? Su Luo listened to what he said and asked. Su Luo knew that it must be the first elder who asked Qing Feng to come and give her directions. Qing Feng nodded. Well, Tianmeng Mountain has 9 mountain pass. In the first mountain pass, the commander ranks spirit power to open the gate. Have you done this before? Su Luo frowned slightly. If this is the case, then the first elder will not allow her to take the assessment so soon. Before, Qing Feng was a little bit embarrassed and hesitated for a while before he said, most of the people who took part in the assessment were already in commander rank, so this step could be overlooked. The first person who crashed through the mountain pass will automatically open the gate. Even if there were people in the 10th rank behind, they could also enter it. Chapter 1931. Second Level 3. Su Luo suddenly became speechless. This time, she took part in this assessment alone. No one else could do it for her, so she had to open the door by herself. Seeing Su Luo's speechless face, Qing Feng smiled and said, There are 3 days left for the second level of the assessment. I hope Miss Su can be promoted to the commander rank within 3 days. Otherwise, even if you have the ability to reach the sky, but you can't open the assessment's gate, it's going to be useless. Qing Feng looked at Su Luo deeply, turned around, and went out. He had done what the first elder ordered, and hoped that Miss Su will not disappoint the first elder. As soon as the Qing Feng left, the rest of the people were silent and looked at each other. Promote to the commander rank within 3 days. This... Bei Qinying's thick black eyebrows were tightly furrowed. That is simply impossible, right? No one was sure that she could be promoted. Ziyin patted her head, annoyed with herself. I actually forgot such an important thing. I'm so stupid. It's not that you're stupid. It's called dark under the light. It's easy to overlook it. Su Luo waved her hand. It doesn't matter. Isn't there still 3 days left? Maybe I can break through in 3 hours. 3 days are not long or short. In these 3 days, Su Luo closed the door and shut herself in the room. She immersed herself and put all her minds in cultivation. Su Luo had never been so calm when she cultivated. When the mind was completely quiet, time and events were all meaningless. Su Luo, who immersed herself in cultivation, had no idea how long the outside world has passed or where she was. Her mind was quiet like the blue ocean, and her brain were as calm as a straight line. When she cultivated, suddenly, Su Luo felt a string in her mind seemed to loosen. Because of the pure mind, the closed 5 senses opened in an instant. She was able to feel the sound of the wind blowing lightly in the night, able to hear the murmurs on the distant mountaintop, and able to smell the herbs in the air. But even though it was opened, Su Luo's mind was still quiet. Her mind was as pure as the water in the mountain, without any ripples or distracting thoughts. The 5 senses was opened, the mind was still. Su Luo's spirit had been completely immersed in the cultivation. The mind and spirit were fused, undisturbed by the outside world. This world, she saw in her eyes, listened in her ears, but did not keep them in her mind. There was nothing in Su Luo's mind. 3 days passed by. This day was the second level of the assessment. Ziyin and the others gathered in front of Su Luo's door. Each one was frowning and looked serious. They didn't know what to do. Luo already shut herself in for 3 days. She had been cultivating for the past 3 days. If we knocks on the door now, will she be disturbed? Ziyin wanted to knock on the door. Her hand was raised and lowered, hesitating and in great difficulty. She was afraid she would disturb Su Luo while she was cultivating. In another half an hour, the second level of the assessment will begin. If we don't go now, our previous efforts will be in vain. Beichening was also felt very difficult. The group of people just looked at each other in dismay and couldn't make up their minds. Su Luo, wearing a goose-yellow dress, appeared in front of the crowd. In the next moment, the closed door creaked open. Her skin was almost translucent and white like snow, as if it could be broken by the blow of a wind. Beautiful and extremely delicate. She stood there like a fairy coming out of the painting, making people unable to look away. Chapter 1932. Second level 4. Ziyin was the first to react. Luo, you came out? How is it? Have you broken through yet? With a series of voices, Su Luo's bell-like laughter did not appear. At this time, Su Luo looked strange. She didn't speak, just nodded, lowered her eyes and eyebrows and walked out. Ziyin and the others suddenly felt odd. They looked at each other and found that everyone looked doubtful. Is it because she can't break through, so she is in a bad mood? Ziyin said in a low voice. However, Ziyin herself didn't believe it, because with her understanding of Su Luo, even if she didn't break through, her mood would not be so low. Could it be there's something wrong with her cultivation? Beichening pointed to his forehead. Crow's mouth. Even if you have 100 problems, it won't be a problem for Luo. Ziyin glared at Beichening and quickly followed Su Luo's footsteps. Su Luo doesn't walk fast, but every step seemed to be very regular and mechanical, like it was measured with a ruler. She seemed like a walking corpse without a soul. Ziyin was anxious. She followed Su Luo step by step. She looked at her nervously, but didn't dare to speak. Beichening was also very anxious. He even ran towards Su Luo. He walked back a few steps and carefully observed Su Luo's facial expression. Seeing Su Luo hanging her head down, Beichening felt very strange. He stretched out his 5 fingers and shook them in front of Su Luo. However, Su Luo was not happy. She pushed his hand aside. Is this considered a bit of a reaction? Beichening looked at Ziyin in uncertainty. Ziyin frowned and tried to talk to Su Luo, but Su Luo only nodded and shook her head. She still continued to walk, without saying a word. For a moment, the group people all looked at each other. What's going on? Ziyin was crying anxiously. It was as if the 3 souls and 6 senses suddenly a bit lost, and the mind was incomplete. In this way, Can we still participate in the second level of the assessment? How about we just don't go? Beichening was also anxious. His head was sweating. If Su Luo went over like this, it was simply throwing away one's life. But also, he thought of the second level of the assessment. The venue must have gathered countless of people. The first level had attracted so many people. Those people were unwilling to see Su Luo pass the first level. They were certainly looked forward to Su Luo's failure. And now, if Su Luo go over like this, won't she be laughed to death? Forget it. Let Luo decide for herself. Ziyin followed behind Su Luo and made a decision. In any case, there was no danger if she go, and Luo did not break through successfully. The gate won't be able to be opened. There will not be any danger. Beichening had no better options, so he had to accept Ziyan's opinion. All of them followed Su Luo and hurried to Tianmeng Mountain with her pace. Su Luo's speed seemed to be measured. When they arrived, the time was just right, not a second earlier and not a second later. It doesn't seem like there's a problem with her mind. Beichening muttered with his hands on the hips. Sure enough, as Beichening expected, many onlookers have stood there. In the first level, Lu Yi, who was bullied by Su Luo and Ziyin, brought people to the venue early. In the first level, she lost so much face. In the second level, she naturally wanted to get back at them. Chapter 1933. Second level 5. There was one more person beside Lu Yi, Qingyi. Qingyi's strength was much better than Lu Yi. Qingyi was another disciple of Bright Moon Hall who had entered the genius training camp after Serene Fairy. At this moment, she was frowning. Her eyes were cold. Her eyes were glittering like frost and snow, and she had a murderous aura. Unexpectedly, Lin Banli and Luo Yichan were also there. Just now, several people were talking about Su Luo, but they didn't expect to see a dazed figure coming over mechanically. Su Luo! Lu Yi cried in surprise. With Lu Yi's voice, Qingyi followed her line of sight and looked at Su Luo. Qingyi was not interested in who was assessed, but how Su Luo made Bright Moon Hall lost face and deeply offended them. So she came here, naturally, to support Lu Yi. That's the one who insulted the Bright Moon Hall? Qingyi stared at Su Luo. Her eyes were fierce like a poisonous snake. Amen. Lu Yi nodded firmly. You were insulted by a fool? Lu Yi, why don't you just die? Qingyi poked hard at Lu Yi's forehead, hating the iron for not becoming steel. Lu Yi covered her forehead and explained gloomily. How can she be a fool? She was obviously still lively and very arrogant 3 days ago. Lin Banli smiled lightly and gave a meaningful glance towards Luo Yichan and said with a smile, Older brother Luo, you lost this time. Later don't forget the points. Luo Yichan's eyes were fixed on Su Luo, and his face was as calm as a mirror lake. His eyes were unfathomable, making people unable to see his emotions. Lin Banli said to himself, she wasn't able to break through. We won't be able to see excitement in this second level. It's very boring. Let's just go. As he said this, he shook his fan and slowly wanted to leave. At this moment, Ziyin and the others hurriedly surrounded Su Luo, protecting her tightly, afraid that the bustling crowd could collide with Su Luo. At this time, where do they have time to consider the other side's offensive words? Those people did not forget to humiliate Su while they were walking. She's only 10 ranked, yet she wanted to take the assessment of the genius training camp. Truly bite off more than she can chew, overestimating her capabilities. Now she can't even open the gate of the second level. Really embarrassing. That's right. Even if she have the first elders protecting her, then what? Her strength is lacking. She was unlikely to able to break through and be promoted to higher rank in 3 days. Since the establishment of the genius training camp, I have never heard that someone can't pass the assessment because they can't open the gate to the assessment. This is really smearing the name of the genius training camp assessment. Everyone shook their heads disdainfully and discussed with jeers. Time goes by. Seeing that all the people had left was a little black spot, Su Luo was still standing still on the spot, with his head slightly hanging, as if she was listening to the people's criticism. All of a sudden, there was a thunder in the clear sky. Rumble the sky seemed to burst, shaking violently between the heaven and the earth, like an earthquake, shaking the crowd around. The earth-shattering thunder was even louder. Rumble, one after another, like a heavy hammer, hit everyone's heart, smashed their hearts, making them shudder with fear. 1 strike, 2 strikes, 3 strikes, 5 strikes, 6 strikes, 7 strikes, 9 strikes. A total of 9 thunders. Every time was louder than before, were fast, violent, and unceasing. Chapter 1934. Second level 6. Everyone was shocked on the spot. Heavens! What's going on? How can there be so many thunders on a sunny day? It's unlikely that there's someone who's breaking through the commander rank, right? Isn't there going to be a thunderstrike when someone is promoted from 10th rank to commander rank? Nonsense. Have you ever seen anyone who was struck by a thunder 9 times in a row when they were promoted to the commander rank? 6 is already a lot, okay? At this moment, someone suddenly shouted, Look back! So everyone looked back. At this time, in the place where they had just left, there was dragon fluttered in the sky, very shining. It can't be Su Luo is breaking through? It's impossible. Many people didn't believe it, but no matter how they didn't believe it, the fact was in front of them. They were at a loss for words. At this time, Su Luo had already sat with her legs crossed. Her complexion was serious and cold. Her hands were placed on her knees. Her face was calm and peaceful. In the sky above her, it was still thundering and lightning flashing incessantly. Lin Bamley looked at Luo Yichen, who had never left, and touched his nose. But he had to admit that his insight on people were not as good as his. Nobody expected that Su Luo would break through at this moment. If she break through, then she would be qualified to the assessment of the Genius Training Camp and open the gate to the 2nd level. Lin Bamley smiled bitterly, then walked back with the crowd of people. As Louis walked back, she glared angrily, dissatisfied, and reproached noisily. Even if she managed to break through to the commander rank, so what? Isn't she still at the bottom of the commander rank? Could it be she really able to pass the 2nd level? Qing Yi stared at Su Luo coldly. Her eyes looked like they were poisonous, but those vicious eyes flashed by, and the calm look returned quickly. At this time, the crowds had returned to their original positions. Their expressions were very complicated. It was even more awkward to look at Su Luo. She slowly raised her head, revealing the beautiful face capable of causing the downfall of a country, and the people who was looking at her couldn't help but to be absent-minded. Su Luo faintly raised the corner of her lips and slowly moved. Everyone's eyes were focused on her. Each and every move of hers caused an unceasing ripples in their hearts. Louis stared at Su Luo and said indignantly, You actually have a good luck. Unexpectedly, Yo broke through at the last moment. I have more than luck. With her head held high, she turned around and walked to the dark mountain gate. Don't think that you are so great just because you are promoted to the commander rank. Compared to the past candidates, you are only at the bottom. Lu Yi yelled. Su Luo's mouth was slightly raised, ignoring the lively Lu Yi. The dark mountain gate was like a black iron. The surface was smooth as if it was cut with a knife. In the middle, there was some kind of palm imprint. Su Luo's small palm was put on this deep imprint, and then released the commander rank aura. Everyone's attention was focused on Su Luo's little palm. Crash dash, sensing the aura of the commander rank, the mountain gate opened. Inside the mountain gate, dense fog lingers like a wonderland, but also mysterious. Su Luo looked back to Ziyin with a smile and said, If you can win points, don't be polite, the more the better. It's a must. Ziyin smiled and nodded firmly. Coming to this point, it's already beyond Ziyin's imagination. Chapter 1935. Second level 7. Originally, she thought that with Su Luo's current state, she could not be assessed at all. Who would have thought things changed for the better? Extreme sorrow turned to joy. Not only Su Luo recovered from her lifeless figure, but also broke through to the commander rank. At this time, Zian also thought that Su Luo's foolish appearance before must be because she was silently breaking through. Fortunately, there's still time. Su Luo walked into the mountain. After Su Luo walked in, the black iron gate automatically closed. At the same time, the smooth black iron gate turned into a white light screen in an instant. Just like the first level, through this light screen, they could see the scene inside clearly. In the mountain, there's only one path that could reach the peak, and on this path, every checkpoint was filled with dangerous terrain. One was more dangerous than the other. What's even more depressing is that in this mountain range, one wouldn't know what method to use. It was actually a forbidden empty area. There was no other way except to go up this winding path. Su Luo walked up the mountain path slowly. Although the time was tight, but she was not in a rush. To outsiders, she seemed to be leisurely taking a walk, but only Su Luo knew that she was looking and listening to all directions. Her eyes was full of alert. Don't know if Su Luo was lucky. She walked for an hour, but he didn't even see the shadow of Ghost. But the more vigilant Su Luo was. Because apart from the 9 checkpoints, she could still be attacked by magical beast at any time. She would never allow herself to meet with unexpected failure. Unconsciously, Su Luo came to the first dangerous checkpoint. Wolf Tooth Waterfall. A majestic waterfall stood in front of Su Luo. Even though still thousands of meters away, Su Luo could feel the turbulent momentum, could still be splashed by the droplets of water, and the rumble of the waterfall was resonated in her ears. It could clearly be seen what the formidable power of this waterfall. Su Luo rubbed her ears and approached the waterfall little by little. The clothes on her body were already drenched before she got close to 100 meters. The air was moist, and the moist smell filled the tip of her nose. Su Luo raised her eyes. She noticed that when she looked at the waterfall, she could barely see the end, and it's high, as if it crashed down from the highest of the heavens, as if it was reaching through the sky. So high. There was no path in all directions. The only way was to climb up from the waterfall. However, the waterfall here was not a simple waterfall. Su Luo stood in the waterfall and felt it for a while. She found that the gravity in the waterfall was doubled. To climb firmly to the top of this kind of waterfall was at the risk of being washed away. Su Luo thought about it and felt that was difficult. But this is the only way. There was no other choice. Come on, it's just a test. Su Luo went into the water barefoot, step by step, firmly toward the waterfall not far away. The reason why it's called Wolf Tooth Waterfall was because on the cliff walls of the waterfall, every 100 meters, there would be a protruding rock, which was white and sharp, just like the teeth in the mouth of a lone wolf. Su Luo went in the water several times and was almost washed away by the turbulent water. Fortunately, she was steady. Her feet were like a stake inserted to ground, remained motionless. Above her head, the waterfall poured down in torrents, with a great force. If she was an ordinary person, she would have been crushed. Chapter 1936. Second level, 8. But Su Luo straightened her back, like a pine tree, facing the eroding waterfall, slowly raised her head. Her ears were deafened by the sound of water. The rumbling sound was unceasing, kept on, hitting the eardrums, making it extremely painful. But Su Luo raised her head, her eyes were half squinted, and the corner of her mouth slowly formed a smile. 9,999 meters of the Wolf Tooth Waterfall. Every 100 meters, there would be a sharp wolf tooth rock, which will also be her foothold. 99 stops for rest, it's enough. Su Luo silently calculating the impact of the water flow and her own strength. Then she took a deep breath, only to find that there was full of spirit in her chest. One only saw her feet slightly moved up. She leapt, and her body dashed against the water. However, Su Luo had miscalculated. Just 1 meter away from the wolf tooth, Su Luo's body was already unable to go up, so under the impact of such a powerful waterfall, she could only fall down. However, Su Luo would not let this happen. Su Luo's arms suddenly stretched out. A golden vine with a dazzling golden light came out of her sleeve, rushed against the water swiftly and violently. and immediately caught the wolf's tooth. The corner of Su Luo's mouth raised up and formed a smile. The Varian acacia tree was really her good partner. She had relied on it many times to save her from dangerous situations. There was only 1 meter away, so Su Luo grabbed the golden vine. Her figure moved and flashed to the first wolf tooth. The wolf tooth were extremely sharp, sharper than the tip of a needle. It was not a place to stand. Su Luo didn't stand. The palm of her hand clapped the wolf tooth. With this force, Su Luo's body suddenly leapt up. It was extremely fast, just like a flash of lightning. Just as she was approaching the wolf tooth, the golden vine in Su Luo's arm swished out again and hooked the second wolf tooth. Su Luo's skill suddenly made the onlookers dumbfounded. It's impossible, right? Su Luo still has a plant pet in her hand? How precious is a plant pet? I didn't expect this girl to be so lucky. She's stupid. Since she has a plant pet, why didn't she throw the golden vine on the first wolf tooth at that time? Why did she have to waste her strength climbing up to 2/3 of the way before she used the golden vine to wrap around the wolf's tooth? It doesn't make sense at all. Everyone agreed with the second person's words. Lin Banley snorted unhappily. Simply stupid. The plant pet has not reached the commander rank. The distance between the 2 wolf teeth is 100 meters. It isn't going to work, okay? Su Luo goes up 2/3 by herself, and then goes up the remaining distance with the help of the golden vine. I say, this girl is the most intelligent person, right? Everyone clapped their thighs, and then they realized that Su Luo was full of tricks, and as it happens, others had nothing to say. Because the assessment did not restrict the use of spirit pet. As long as you have plant pet, you could use it. But in the past, no one ever thought of this kind of cheat. However, in the end, it's still a trick, and she won't be able can't reach the top of the mountain. Lin Banley snorted twice. Not necessarily. Luo Yichen always stood by Su Luo's side. You really still optimistic about her? Lin Banley snorted again. Or else, make a bet? It was rare for Luo Yichen to be interested. Lin Banley's eyes suspiciously swept over Luo Yichen's face. But Luo Yichen's expression was calm, so he could not obtain any clue. Chapter 1937. Second level, 9. At the end, Lin Banley patted his silver token on his waist and said with a loud voice, 5,000 points, bet or not. The corner of Luo Yichen's mouth slightly curved. Very well. Let's bet whether Su Luo could reach the top or not. I still don't believe it. A witless little girl from the outside, who just got promoted to the commander rank, could overpower a large number of people in the inner city. Lin Banley sneered. In the inner city, there were a lot of people who were on the commander rank, but there may not be one who was able to pass the Genius Training Camp assessment in a year. Luo Yichen's eyes slightly narrowed, looking at the small figure that kept jumping up in the light screen. The bottom of the eyes was deep and serene. Then he nodded. Okay. Thus, the bet was created this way. Ziyin was eager to give it a try, but because Lu Yi lost miserably on the first round, she didn't follow suit this time. So Ziyin lacked a foolish, spendthrift person to swindle. In the screen, in the beginning, Su Luo was not able to control her strength when she jumped up, but afterwards, her movements became more proficient, and she could also control her strength better. First, she jumped to a certain height. Then she threw the golden vine. Then she dashed against the water again with her strength. After she rushed up, as she passed the wolf tooth, she clapped it with the palm of her hand. Then with her strength, she rushed up rapidly. Then once again, she drew support from the golden vine. And so on, repeating this cycle. The pressure of the waterfall was very heavy. Ordinary people, not to mention standing, even when lying down, they would be crushed into mincemeat. But Su Luo not only had to rush upwards under such gravity, but she also could not stop for a rest, which made it a bit more difficult. 9,999 meters waterfall. Inevitably, she would come to a stop. Su Luo clapped the last wolf tooth. Her body moved rapidly, like an eagle, rushed out of the waterfall and into the blue sky. Then she landed steadily in the pool of water. This was the top of the waterfall. The ground was flat and smooth. As far as the eyes could see, there was vast expanse of water, as vast as the ocean. But the current was not fast. Su Luo slowly exhaled the turbid air. The previous continuous movement almost consumed all of her strength, nearly making her unable to stand, and fell on her knee. But the strong willpower supported her. Outside the light screen, many people took a deep breath. She went up so fast, How could this speed is not much slower than the Serene Fairy, right? The Serene Fairy took a quarter of an hour, but Su Luo took 5 minutes more. Heavens, She only took 5 minutes more than the Serene Fairy. That's incredible, right? The Serene Fairy had broken the hundreds of years of the Wolf-Tooth Waterfall's record. Isn't it because Su Luo cheated? Serene Fairy didn't rely on any plant pets, but completely relied on her own strength. Okay? Nevertheless, this Su Luo should not be underestimated. Maybe she could really reach the top. After all, she used all sorts of back doors. She could reach the top. It's simply a joke. Gradually, there were two factions in the crowd. One faction was against Su Luo, which occupied the majority. Under the temporary leadership of Lu Yi and the supporter of the Serene Fairy, they mainly ridicule and slander Su Luo. The other faction was supporting Su Luo. For the time being, the number of people in this faction was quite small, less than 1% of the crowd. Moreover, even their own hearts were wavering and full of doubts. In the screen, Su Luo had dried her clothes. Through the vast expanse of water, she continued to rush up the winding path. Chapter 1938. Second level 10. Su Luo's speed was very fast, just like a gust of wind. Luo Yichen's eyes slightly narrowed, and a light of surprise flashed through the bottom of his eyes. He touched his chin, and his eyes were full of doubt. How could he feel that after she passed through the test of the Wolf-Tooth Waterfall, the girl's speed was getting fast again? This time, with Su Luo rushing at the full speed, not much time was spent the road. The second mountain pass, man-eating swamp. Seeing the endless swamp, Su Luo's figure paused. Qing Feng had already informed her, and the man-eating swamp was full of vicious crocodiles. Each of these crocodiles was commander-ranked, and their attack power was very powerful. And the most terrifying thing was not the man-eating crocodile, but the swamp itself. As long as one fell into the swamp, they would soon be surrounded and ambushed by the man-eating crocodiles, and would be completely and cleanly eaten. Because these crocodiles have been hungry for a very, very long time. Su Luo looked at the endless crocodiles in front of her. She frowned slightly, touched her chin, and pondered over. It seemed to be difficult to step into this swamp and come out safe and sound. Is there any safer way? Suddenly, Su Luo's eyes brightened. She suddenly thought of something long ago. At that time, she and Nangong Luyun were trapped in an isolated island. And later they returned from the island. Because there was no boat, Nangong Luyun took her with him. Only relying on a plank under their feet, he took her back to the shore through the boundless ocean. So, is it possible to use this method here? At this moment, suddenly, a fierce beast in the swamp rose to the sky and roared. With this roar, the originally quiet swamp was now rolling and bowling up. Roar, 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 dash. Countless of crocodiles were writhing, jumping, and roaring in the swamp, attacking each other. Looking at the cold and fierce teeth, Su Luo's fingers that was holding the plank suddenly paused. This won't do. Su Luo quickly rejected this idea. These man-eating crocodiles were so ferocious. Although she could glide on the swamp with the plank, these man-eating crocodiles were incomparably cruel and fierce. Furthermore, she's still in the no-fly area, so she couldn't fly. If she falls into the swamp, everything would be over. So, she had to think of another way. Hence, Su Luo began to search in her space. There were many good things hidden in her space, and while she was searching, she also tried to look for an insight. Off the screen, because Su Luo was searching in her space, at this moment her body was standing and her eyes looked dull, so she created a misconception. Her guts is really small, Is she frightened? She's frightened? No way, right? Look how she got there before. She only used a cheat for a while. The most important thing is strength. There were ridiculing voices, and there was a lot of discussion among the crowd, full of all kinds of doubts and skepticism about whether Su Luo was going to pass or not. At this moment, Su Luo's eyes suddenly glistened. Crocodiles. No matter what rank it is, it was also a type of magical beast, so it should be fond of celestial spirit water, right? Su Luo's eyes were half squinted, smiling slyly, like a fox. She turned her palm, then a white porcelain bottle appeared in her hand. Inside is the high-grade celestial water. Su Luo hadn't used it for a long time. Now Su Luo couldn't decide whether commander-ranked magical beast would like it or not, so she decided to give it a try. Chapter 1939, Tianmeng Mountain 1. Su Luo took the bottle of celestial spirit water, looked happily at the continuously wriggling crocodiles in the swamp, and the corner of her mouth showed a wicked smile. Su Luo did not try to take risks either. She let the golden vine slowly extend it out, wrapping around the white porcelain bottle, and spilled it on the swamp. After the celestial spirit water was spilled on the swamp, it quickly emitted an extremely alluring smell. For magical beasts, this was a big supplement. But Su Luo wasn't sure whether these man-eating crocodile would like it or not, so she sat there, rested her hands on her cheeks, and waited patiently. Originally, those man-eating crocodiles rolled violently and fought cruelly, but when they sniffed this smell, soon the man-eating crocodiles gathered towards the place where the celestial spirit water had been spilled. 1, 2, 3, 10, 20, 30. In the end, there was a densely packed of vicious man-eating crocodiles all over, and making Su Luo's hair stand on end. It was only a little bit of celestial spirit water, but there were so many crocodiles, what to do? Fight. Fighting was the best way to determine the victor of the man-eating crocodiles. So before Su Luo returned to her senses, these man-eating crocodiles were already fighting in their lair. And it was group fight. The battle was very exciting. Su Luo was unable to take her eyes off. The fight came quickly and ended quickly because the little bit of celestial spirit water in the swamp had already been swallowed by a man-eating crocodile. Su Luo was very satisfied with the results of her experiment. As long as the man-eating crocodiles liked the celestial spirit water, then her plan could be implemented. Su Luo's method was very simple. As for whether it was effective or not, she had to wait until the result came out. This time, she still needed the help of the golden vine. Su Luo took a deep breath and narrowed her eyes. Then she jumped forward rapidly and leaped a few hundreds of meters away. Su Luo had already calculated it earlier, and there was a man-eating crocodile that stopped for rest there, so Su Luo tread her feet on the head of the man-eating crocodile. At this time, the crowd on the outside suddenly made an uproar. Heavens! How could there be such a stupid human being in this world? She even stepped on the crocodile's head with her feet. Isn't she just seeking death? After all the trials of countless seniors, this is the stupidest method. This girl actually looks pretty good, but it's a pity she doesn't have a brain. It's really a pity. She didn't think these man-eating crocodiles are docile and cute like a domestic animals. Did she? Well, let her step on it obediently. Come on. Those are wild and arrogant man-eating crocodiles, okay? She actually stepped on its head. She's just courting death. Everyone lost all hope in Su Luo. They all felt that Su Luo would die this time. At this moment, Lin Banley's mouth was slightly raised, and his phoenix eyes were full of contentment. He shook his fan and smiled triumphantly. Brother Luo, 5,000 points, don't forget. Luo Yichen's mouth was slightly hooked. He did not respond, but his eyes were fixed on Su Luo's sleeves. Just now, others didn't pay attention, but because he fixed his attention at Su Luo, he didn't miss any expression on her face. When the girl jumped onto the crocodile's head, the flash of slyness and smugness in her did not escape his eye. But he just didn't understand. With her strength, she was obviously could not beat all the man-eating crocodiles, so what was she proud of? Chapter 1940, Tianmeng Mountain 2. Although he was unable to understand, but it didn't affect Luo Yichen's confidence in Su Luo. Because it had been proved many times before, this girl had always shown unexpected performance, and this time it was not surprising. In the swamp, Su Luo lightly stepped on the head of a man-eating crocodile. Just when everyone thought that the man-eating crocodile would be angry, the cannibal crocodile didn't fail to live up to everyone's expectations. It was angry, and it was furious. The pair of eyes burst in a blood-red angry light. One only saw it roared, opened its teeth, suddenly leap up, at the same time, twist its body. The sharp teeth was biting towards Su Luo. At this moment, Su Luo made a move that changed the whole battle situation. Just as the man-eating crocodile turned around and opened its ferocious mouth, Su Luo shot a water arrow into its mouth. The man-eating crocodile was stunned. So sweet. It recognized it. Just now the taste was clearly similar with the one its friends fought with their lives before. What a rich spiritual energy. What a familiar taste. While the man-eating crocodile was stunned, Su Luo grabbed the little sable and let it talk to the man-eating crocodile. Little Sable could understand the human language and animal language. At this time, the little Sable didn't talk much, but directly sneered at the man-eating crocodile, and then said a sentence. After this sentence, the man-eating crocodile cried out as if there was a ghost was chasing after it, and then it suddenly darted forward like an arrow. The speed was faster than a lightning. Su Luo stood unsteadily for a while and almost fell off. Fortunately, she responded quickly and stabilized her body. Su Luo patted the little Sable's head with lingering fear. Little Sable, what did you say to it? The effect was too good, wasn't it? The little Sable sat comfortably on Su Luo's shoulder and proudly swayed its head. I just told the truth. His friends will come to rob him. That sentence was indeed the big truth, but still spoke an inauspicious thing. The celestial spirit water emitted a rich spiritual energy. The nose of the man-eating crocodiles was like a dog's nose. It was extremely sensitive. So before it ran far, there were countless pursuers behind, and there was still a dense mass of man-eating crocodiles blocking the way ahead of them. The situation was extremely critical. The man-eating crocodile under Su Luo's feet growled, so frightened that its legs went soft and almost urinating. Who told you to be gluttonous? Chowhound usually doesn't end well. Su Luo patted the head of the man-eating crocodile. At this time, countless man-eating crocodiles swarmed around and surrounded the glutton crocodile in a circle. At this time, countless man-eating crocodiles swarmed in to form a circle around the gluttonous crocodile. And Su Luo was in the center of this circle, outside the light screen. Those who had originally seen Su Luo running away with a man-eating crocodile, all back to their senses at this time. Oh, I say, that crocodile must have a brain problem just now, so it seemed to have listened to Su Luo's words and would take her to run away. Look, aren't those man-eating crocodiles surrounded Su Luo now? So many of man-eating crocodiles, there were hundreds of them, right? What a pity, such a beautiful girl, alas. Many people shook their heads and sighed. She's dead. She's dead. If she does not die this time, I'll cut my head off and serve it as a stool for you. How cruel was it to watch a beauty be eaten by a group of crocodiles? Even if those people were jealous of Su Luo's privileges and disliked her, they were still full of sympathy for her at this time. That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.